Hello, this is Kurt Wallner. Today we're going to begin work on a couple of spaces in the West Wing that are kind of interrelated, color-wise if nothing else, the Brady Press Room and the Cabinet Room. An interesting aspect of these is that the Brady Press Room used to be the swimming pool that had been built for FDR for his physical exercise. When it came time to convert the room into a usable workspace in 1970, they floored over the pool, filling it with computers and whatnot, and you can still go downstairs and see the tile on the side walls. And then there is the cabinet room. And the cabinet room was built around 1934 or so when they remodeled the West Wing for FDR's uses. Anyway, interesting spaces. So let's get on to it. So in thinking about how I wanted to depict these two spaces, they're at right angles to one another. So the cabinet room goes off towards the Oval Office, and the press room extends toward the residence. And in my thinking about this, I did a thumbnail drawing that showed the residence in the background. And I thought that what could happen is that we would be facing down the barrel of the press room, looking toward the dais, and then the residence would be in the background, and that would make an interesting background. Problem is, that's not how it really works, because the dais is on the West Wing side of the room. And so to have the residence in the background, I would need to flip it around so that we're looking at the press chairs with the dais in the foreground. And I thought, well, in for a buck, in for a pound. I liked the composition with the residence in the background, and I decided to stick with that and just flip the room around so that the dais is in the foreground. So in my process, I have to do the layout of the drawing, where the rooms are going to go, and I have to do a lot of sectional analysis because there's floor level differences between the Brady Press Room and the Cabinet Room, and it's very tricky, and I have to figure out what exactly is going on here. Once I have the layout done, then I can figure out where the residence goes in the background, and that's the first thing that I want to start drawing in more detail because I work from the back to the front. Doing a facade with a lot of equal-sized windows is very tricky because they all have to be equal-sized, and I bunged up the proportions of the upper story windows, so I had to do them over again, making sure that the proportions of the second floor windows were correct. So I had to backtrack a lot and redo things. Something that's kind of a key component of what I do is when I am faced with drawing a room, I spend a lot of time really looking at it. And I've always loved the hints and the clues about what kind of room it is and who uses it because of the things that they leave behind. And the press room is very notable in that because it's not a room that is private. It's not part of the White House Museum, although it kind of is. And yet a lot of people move in and out of that space all the time and we use it. And one of the things that tickled me while I was looking around the room trying to find interesting things to draw in it is that there's a lintel that goes across the top of the room in the back that's what I came to call the whatnot shelf, and it's just filled with all of these little mementos that various journalists have left behind over the years. I doubt that it's in this condition right now, but it's just kind of an interesting little decorative tradition that they have indulged in. Anyway, it's an interesting room. Moving on from the press room, it's time to tackle some of the colonnade outside that runs outside of both of these rooms, which requires the usual extensive research, large-scale plans, etc., etc. But drawing a line of columns is very tricky business, and you end up eyeballing it a lot. The trouble with that is that, like every other aspect of both the East and the West Wing, because I don't have good plans for them, I have to double check everything. The thickness of walls, the height of ceilings, the proportions of how the rooms are shaped, and I need to double check to make sure that my proportions of the cabinet room are correct before I proceed any further. Armed with all this new intel, I can do the up and down part of the drawing with confidence. I have to put in all of these walls and so on before I can put in anything that is in front of the walls, like the table, and I'm going to cut across the fireplace and put that in there. So I'm getting all my interior details from this photograph. It was taken while carpet was being installed in the cabinet hallway, but it doesn't show me the bottom where the molding meets the floor. But the good thing is that the molding, the baseboard in all of the West Wing is pretty much consistent, so I can probably look for what that join is in other photos. I sure hope so. In trying to project the bulk of the Oval Office with its interesting dome roof, I've produced this very surrealistic drawing, I think, of the oval roof with no office under it. But that's my process. To just slip that underneath the render paper and trace the part that shows. After the oval dome, we get to put in finally the main object of interest in the cabinet room table and chairs. These things are very, very, very dear things to put in. Everything has to be just so. I'm trying to replicate the position of the water glasses and papers and so on and whatnot in my other drawing of the cabinet room in the Oval Office picture. Some of the cabinet room table shows, so I want to use the same photographs to base my arrangement of pencils and papers and things like that with. The downstage wall in the cabinet room is pockmarked with a fireplace and some niches that have Benjamin Franklin's bust and a bust of George Washington, and I'd really like to put those in, but they're in the way of the cabinet table, so we cut it off in some kind of way that will allude to these things. So with the addition of the front wall, we bring this pencil to a close. It's going to be interesting coloring this thing, and I can tell you, another example of blue for the press room, red for the cabinet room, and a hint of green in between for the rose garden. Should be interesting. I hope you can join us in our next chapter when we do that one. If you're enjoying these videos, please subscribe to the channel if you would. Thank you for your attention. Until next time, bye-bye.